The recent release of Emma Frost in Marvel Rivals has set the internet, and specifically Rule 34, on fire. And so how convenient is it that Marvel Crisis Protocol has a single set containing both Psylocke and Emma Frost? I'm Angela, and you're watching Hobby Night. In college, I was privileged to study comic books and their creative process for my professional major. But as you may have noticed, I don't particularly draw many comics for my day job. So whenever I get to work with comic book characters for miniature tutorials, it is a bit of a happy throwback for me. And when I saw that Marvel Crisis Protocol had a set out and ready with two of the most popular Marvel Rivals girls, well, it just seemed like a natural fit for me and my work. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and paint Psylocke and two different forms of the White Queen. The Marvel Girls are much softer and curvier sculpts than any Warhammer 40k Space Marine or an intricately detailed D&D model. So instead of using my standard pre-highlighting technique using a dry brush, I primed Psylocke and both Emmas using a Zenithal Prime, starting with a base layer of standard Mechanicus Gray and then hitting them from above and the side using Army Painter White. I took care not to glue the girls to their bases before I primed them, as their bases are highly detailed sculpts and would be a lot easier to paint separately. I chose Emma's Hellfire bases to begin with, and used Dark Oath Flesh to give the impression that the sigil had fallen off the Hellfire Club building and collapsed to the ground mid-battle, and was made of red sandstone. After allowing that to dry, I moved on to Basilicanum Gray for the plate underneath the broken sigil, as well as the concrete on Psylocke's base, which got a second layer of Basilicanum Gray, and then a dry brushing using Dawnstone, a much lighter gray which helped differentiate it from the plate on Emma's base. By the time I was done with the gray, the Dark Oath Flesh I'd used earlier was dry, but not looking dark enough for my liking. So I pulled out a wash of Seraphim Sepia and applied that to the base, and then used Top Brass on the Hellfire H and Trident. With the Emma bases 90% complete, I could turn my attention back to Psylocke's base and that severed Sentinel leg laying across it. I knew I wanted to paint the Sentinel's leg in opaque metallics, so I started with a base layer of Black Templar, knowing that the metallics would appear more saturated and less streaky under a black base coat than if I had left it white. Once dry, I broke out a blue metallic paint called Elven Armor, which I used on the majority of the Sentinel's leg, as I'm basing its composition off the cartoon Sentinels from the 90s cartoon on Fox. After that, I pulled out a purple metallic, which I used on the knee servo plate and heel. Finally, I used a bit of silver to paint the decal on the side of the Sentinel's leg, as well as to finish off the last 10% of the Emma bases, using that same silver to dry brush the metal plate that I had painted before, and then applying a Nuln Oil wash to the Hellfire Club symbol and the entirety of Psylocke's base. Hey guys, I'm just jumping into the video to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because I know most of you aren't. If you're into the spicier side of the content, then you should join my VIP page. New members get 50% off their first month subscription, and I really hope to see you there. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the video. With the bases paint job complete, I can now glue the girls to them. And because these bases are specific to their specific heroine, they actually have holes that the girls' feet are meant to sit in. So all I need to do is grab an old paintbrush and use that to apply a little bit of super glue to those peg holes and stick the girls' feet in. Once the glue is dry, it's time to work on what I think is the most important part of a human character, their skin tone. For Psylocke and normal Emma, I began with a base layer of Magos Purple to act as the foundation for their skin tone. The purple underlayer really helps the skin feel warmer and a bit more lifelike, almost acting as the veins beneath the flesh, as opposed to if I had just left it primed white. Once dry, I began using Barbarian Flesh from the Fanatics line to coat the entirety of their flesh tone, being sure to be extra careful not to hit their costumes as much as I could so I could preserve that original Zenithal highlight. After the Barbarian Flesh was done, they were starting to look alive, but a little bit too pallid and pale for my liking. So I pulled out Reichland's Flesh Shade and applied this over all of their exposed flesh to darken it. This deepened their skin tones, but lost some of those highlights. So for Psylocke, I glazed back on a thin layer of barbarian flesh, just to highlight her a smidge. But for Emma, I did a focus highlight using Dorado skin. This way I could emphasize her paler Caucasian skin tone over Psylocke's Asian skin tone. With that, the skin of our fleshy girls are complete. But what of Emma's diamond form? Skipping the purple step from before, as I do not want her to look like living tissue at all, we're going to base coat the entirety of her skin in a bright silver, which will give us the foundation of the diamond effect I'm going for. Once applied, I'm going to pull out a color called Fairy Dust, which is a translucent paint with a paint medium stuffed full of sparkling confetti pieces, which, when applied over top another color, makes them sparkle. Emma is looking a little too colossus and not enough like the White Queen. So I'm going to thinly glaze on a coating of Aethermatic Blue. This will help not only emphasize her cold personality, but make her look like she's made of diamond and not platinum. The skin was complete on the three ladies, so then I could focus on those iconic comic book costumes. Both of Emma's costumes are pretty simple, as you might expect, being all white, which actually made painting them very easy. All that I need to do was apply a heavy and even coating of Apothecary White to the entirety of their costume and cape to get the effect I was looking for. As for Diamond Emma's hair, I wanted to make it look like it was also made of diamond, but I wanted to avoid it looking too homogeneous with the rest of her skin. So instead of Aethermatic Blue, I pulled out Pilar Glacier, applied this to her hair and let it settle into the recesses. Then I pulled back out Fairy Dust and dry brushed it over top of those ridges, getting a beautiful effect. Flesh Emma received a similar treatment, but for her base coat I used Bad Moon's Yellow, and for the highlight color I chose Ice Yellow. This gave her a classic platinum blonde comic book look that I'm thrilled with. The final touch for both Emmas is to paint the X-Men symbol holding their capes on, and for that I used Curse Gold and then simply applied a Reichland Flesh Shade wash to deepen it. Now with the Emmas complete, we can turn our attention to Psylocke. The sculpt for Psylocke is based on her comic book costume and less so her purple Marvel Rivals costume, which is why I chose Talisar Blue to paint the majority of her suit, as I felt like its color matched the comic book colors perfectly. After layering the blue over her entire suit, careful to avoid her skin, I pulled out Magos Purple for her hair and accessories. This purple paint really emphasizes the power of contrast paint and a Zenithal Prime, not clinging to the raised highlighted areas, but also settling deeply into the recesses. But I realized I made a little bit of an error when I painted this, especially by choosing to use the exact same color on her hair as well as her weapon, because they're just looking way too alike. So I went back to my colored metallics and pulled out Zephyr Pink and dry brushed this over the entirety of her Psy blade, hoping that it would give me the energy effect I was looking for, and I'm very pleased with the results I got. After that, all that was left was her katana, which I painted first in Black Templar, then I came back in with a couple of opaque metallics, specifically the gold we had used previously on Emma for the guard, as well as plate mail for the silver of her katana blade. Then I washed the entirety of the weapon using Nuln Oil, and we don't have too much left we need to take care of on our girls. And the last thing to take care of on the girls is to give them a blacked rim job. Oh, I should probably think about the phrasing of that. Okay, I should. And there you have it. 3 different Marvel Girls, well technically 2 different Marvel Girls, but 1 in 2 different forms that you can now paint for yourself. And I really hope that you do, because honestly, I love seeing people work on the Marvel Crisis Protocol miniatures. They are delightful sculpts. They go together super well, and their bases are always fun to work on because they constantly give you sculpted bases, which I absolutely adore. So I hope you guys enjoyed getting to watch me paint up 3 of these delightful Marvel Girls. Well, I guess technically 2, one of them wasn't just in 2 forms, but regardless, I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm probably going to go play as some of these girls in Marvel Rivals now because I am quite obsessed with that game and I've been loving it quite a bit. I am not very good at it, but I enjoy the heck out of it, and I love running around as all of those beautiful babes, and frankly, the beautiful men too, because let's face it, everybody in that game is gorgeous and perfection, and I thank them for the 18 inches of venom. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much, specifically to my YouTube members and patrons, for making it so content like this can continue to happen. Without your guys' support, we would not be able to do this. So thank you guys very, very much. I have been Angela, and I hope you have a wonderful hobby night. Until next time, everybody. Bye.